subject of be sustained. I really introduced us to this topic as one of the niches that we shall be able to tackle deeply so that we can understand the various aspects of how the young generation can be able to work and are living and sustain their lives. You understand, we live in a very critical moments of the earth's history, and friends, you understand that employment is scarce and jobs are quite unreliable, friends. Sometimes it is often very wise to opt for being your own boss. And if we tackle some of the aspects of being able to uh, to build an economy, or rather to build an employment opportunity for fellow young people, friends, it is my pleasure to share with you Be Sustain again. So in our previous discussion, friends, we were able to look deeply into the concept of being able to raise bees or to keep bees for sustenance. And we were able to see the bees colony, and we realized that the bees colony is comprised of the queen bee, the drone bees, and then we have the worker bees or the nurse bees. The drone bees, we can also call them the king bees, and then the queen bees, we can also call them the mother bees. So I really explained in a short while about the queen bees, and I was able to explain to us that the queen bee have a very important duty in the bees colony, and the work of the queen bee is to lay eggs. That is the chief work. And I talked about the very characteristics of the queen bee, and I was able to reiterate that the queen bee is quite unique. It's different from the other bees. It's large, it has a long abdomen, it has a large thorax. So the long abdomen contains the brooding mechanism, or that mechanism that it makes it able to lay eggs. Unlike other bees, unlike the worker bees, which are just quite of the normal size. And most of the bees, friends, that you see around are worker bees because they do all the work. So basically, for the queen bees, they are the mother bees. Like they do the work of bringing up a new generation, laying eggs, and keeping all that. And then we also talk about their lifespan. They can be able really to live for 2 to 5 years. It depends with the kind of environment and also some factors about the ability of the worker bees or the nurse bees to contain that colony for any other time. But for commercial beekeeping, friends, the queen bees, it's advisable to have the queen bees for 1 to 2 years. Then you can change the queen bees. It is in the work, it is in the hands of the beekeeper to see how productive is the queen bee. And also there is some of the biological behaviors of that happens in the colony. And that is why I want to explain to us that the queen bee is able to lay eggs to a maximum of 2,000. That is 1,500 to 2,000 eggs in a single day. And that is why you will really notice that even if something, any other thing occurs in a bee's colony, it doesn't affect it doesn't affect the colony, because the queen bee is able to lay eggs on a daily basis, 1,500 to 2,000. And you see, after every 21 days, there is a new generation that is mature and it is ready to work, it is ready to build the economy again. So imagine if today the queen bee was able to lay 1,500 to 2,000 eggs. In the next 21 days, these eggs that were laid today have been hatched and they have grown to maturity, and they are workers, they are strong enough, they are young men, right? They can be able to work, they can be able to earn a living, they can be able to feed the brood, they can be able to feed the drones, right? So that is what really happens with the queen bee. So the queen bee in a bee's colony, or in a bee's hive, in a bee's colony, the queen must only be one. And that is why I appreciate the fact that even in the beginning of all things, God in his wisdom did give Adam a helpmeet, and she was Eve. It was one and the only Eve, the one and the only rib of his rib and flesh of his flesh. And it is very true, as the scripture says, that the Lord in wisdom has made man perfect. But because man has invented many inventions, they are now wretched, they are now corrupt, and the evil that really is promulgated in the world is a result of disobedience, friends. So even in this, as we tackle this aspect, we really don't want to close our ears to the fact that the animals, the insects, the bees are one of the creatures that should really teach us of the characteristics of God and who God is, and what was His design from the beginning of all things, because they have been very wise. They have been really be able to keep what God designed getting away from it. So the queen bee has a very important duty, raising the brood and laying eggs so that the generation can stand. So in a bee's colony, it is always that the queen bee must only be one. In cases where queen bees are two, then that is what we call an error state. So error state must be corrected within 24 to 48 hours so that the colony may continue growing. So in cases where the queen bee is not reproductive, or it is when the worker bees or the nurse bees realize that the queen is not very much productive based on their expectation, they can decide to expel her. Yeah, they can decide to expel her, and when a queen bee is expelled, always she has what we call the allies, those who favors her. And so while the queen bee may be expelled, then it goes out, it swarms around. That is the instances where you will find maybe a bunch of bees in your backyard, a bunch of bees in your roof, a bunch of bees in somewhere or somewhere. You understand? So in that very scenario, the queen bee has been found to be unproductive based on the expectation of the nurse bees or the queen bees, because even the bees has what we have power. Remember in the Garden of Eden, God really said that humanity shall have dominion over all the animals and all the fish and all the birds and everything. And so the bees would want to have that dominion. They would want to dominate their colony, or they would want to dominate their ecological niche. And that is why it is so advisable that when you're keeping the bees, or when you're keeping and having an apiary somewhere, then the next apiary should be about 3 kilometers away, so that your bees colony would have a good ecological niche to find the bees forage, and to find food and be able to raise its brood adequately. You with me? So up to this point, we have been able to understand the queen bees, their roles, their lifespan, their ability to lay eggs, and what happens when in case they can die, right? They can die within. It depends with the environment, and it depends with the kind of treatment, or whether the food is available, whether there is enough water, and the rest of this. Its ability to lay eggs. When its ability to lay eggs is adequate of 2,000, then it is obvious that the nurse bees will keep it around so that it will be able to feed the colony for the next generation. So the next kind of bees is the nurse bees or the worker bees. So the nurse bees are generally female bees, and these are female bees that have really opted to be sterile. Not that they are not able to give birth, but because they have decided to, in order to serve the colony, or in order to serve the king. In other words, I would really say that the nurse bees or the worker bees are the kings, because if you can be able to regulate the ability of persons to get food and a living, and everything, then you're the king. And also bring the concept that the kings ought to be serving their subjects, then the worker bees are generally the kings, I could say. And that is the principle of the scriptures, that if any one of you wants to be great, or if any one of you wants to be the master, let him be the servant. So the worker bees are really working on that principles, because they are the servant. And that means they are the kings, because they ensure that the bees colony is fed, they ensure that the bees colony is clean, they ensure that the house is in order, and all the rest of the things. In other words, I could also say that the nurse bees are the housekeepers. The housekeepers, what is the work of the housekeeper? We find he'll ensure the house is clean, the waste are thrown away, there is food in the house, the sweeping is done, if there is mopping is done, everything is in order. That is what is called the housekeeping duties. Just as in the human family, we have housekeeping duties. So for housekeeping duties, that is if you understand what housekeeping duties in the human family is, then definitely you understand what is the duty of the nurse bees, or rather the worker bees. And I've said that the worker bees are generally female bees who have chosen, it is not by compulsion, but they have chosen out of love to be sterile, in order that they may serve the queen in raising a colony. So they are the largest percentage, they are the largest group of bees in the apiary, because they do the greatest percentage of work. And in cases where the queen bee is expelled, then they have a committee, like in the human family, people like things to be done in order. So in the bees colony, in case the queen bee dies or the queen bee is expelled because of unable to fulfill its duty, what the worker bee simply does is to really look within themselves and say, who amongst us is able to be raised into a queen. So they'll choose one of them and they will say, maybe so and so Atieno, or they will say like, our sister here is meet, is in a position to raise our colony. So they choose one of them. So when they've chosen one of them, then they feed her with what is called the we call it the royal jelly. Royal jelly is a very concentrated mixture of bees forage and everything that will enable the worker bee to be transformed into a queen bee, and that can take 3 to 4 days. So this royal jelly is very concentrated in sugar, concentrated in nutrients and vitamins that can be able to give it that ability to be transformed from simply a worker bee into a queen bee. So it is no longer sterile, but it becomes feminine. Something that I didn't tell us about the queen bees is that the queen bees would lay eggs. It will lay fertilized eggs and unfertilized eggs. Fertilized eggs are then hatched into worker bees or the female bees. Then unfertilized eggs are hatched into what we call the drone bees. So the drone bees are the male bees. So that brings me now to handling about the drone bees. So the drone bees are the male bees. They only have a single task. They only have the task of mating. That is the only task that the drones have. The next task that they may have in the hive is to keep the hive warm. So when you get to a beehive, you may find some of the bees they are quite small. They are quite different from the rest. They are short. They have a short abdomen, a shorter thorax, a shorter head, and they don't have the bees. So they cannot sting. Their duty is simply to keep the hive warm by buzzing around. You'll find them just buzzing around and keeping the hive warm. When the time for mating comes, that is when their duty arrives in verity. So they go around, like they simply work so hard so that they may find themselves among the 8 to 10, because during mating it can mate to with 8 to 10 drones, so that it can be able to be mature and be able to lay fertilized eggs. And that is generally the duties of the drones. They have no other duty. They can stay in the hive for a very short time. Once their duty is done, then the worker bees does not need them around. So oftentimes they are expelled and they die outside. They are out of starvation and cold and everything. So up to that point, I know you've been able to understand the bees colony in the explanation with the analogy of use of the human family. The human family is composed of the father, the mother, and the children. The bees colony is composed of the queen bee, the drone bees, and the worker bees. And so, like unlike the human family, we have the father as the chief provider, and like in the bees colony, we have the worker bees as the chief providers. And then we see this and we can be able to understand that. So in order for one to be able to raise a strong colony to withstand all the harsh conditions and to raise adequate honey for commercial purpose and domestic use, then one of the chief things is that there must be enough bees, forage, enough water, and all these things. So friends, thank you for joining this session. I hope you are blessed so much. I'm really inviting us for the next session. We shall be able to see the process of the lifespan of a bees colony, or the life cycle of a bee. So feel free to join our session, friends. I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure meeting you and sharing with you this content. I hope you are blessed so much, and in our proceeding videos, we shall be able to give you far more greater evidences, and also be able to show us some of the practical things we can be able to do in order to raise a very strong colony, to raise honey, the beeswax, and the rest of the things. Thank you for your time, and may the Lord bless us all. Amen.